every black person or black race watching this video will eventually cry. And why am I saying this? Yes, you are going to cry because of how your ancestors or your forefathers suffered, what they went through, the agony, the trauma, the emotional torture that they went through before you came into existence. And just imagine yourself with your family, your wife, your kids, your lovely ones, and all of a sudden someone comes to capture you, put you into captivity, sells you to your slave master for you to become a slave in a foreign land. And this is what our ancestors went through. They did nothing wrong. They never committed any crime. They never did anything bad. But here lies the case that they were being detached from their loved ones. So their dreams were being shattered. Plans that they had were just being shattered. I mean, there was nothing for them to do again. They couldn't see their loved ones anymore. They couldn't even get to meet people that they plan life with. And this is very hurtful. It's past, it's a history now. But then the pain and the scars are still left on us for us, the Gen Zs, to also feel it. Some moved all the way from the northern sector, all to Ashanti region, to the eastern, down to the south. And honestly, these people didn't move, or they weren't transported by through cars or chariots. They were transported on foot. And when they were even coming on their way, they moved through the forest, bush, heavy forest, and some of them were being attacked by wild animals.
Welcome to Assin Manso Slave River site. Never again.
Assin Manso sits along the Cape Coast Kumasi Highway and is about 40 kilometers from Cape Coast. At first glance, it may look like any other Ghanaian town, but hidden here is one of the most powerful symbols of the transatlantic slave trade. This is where you find the Slave River, known locally as Donkonsuo. And for countless enslaved Africans, this river was the site of their last bath on African soil. From here, they were marched to the coastal castles of Elmina and Cape Coast and forced onto ships bound for the Americas. Assin Manso is not just a town. It's a place of memory, of grief, and of reconnection. Graffiti. This is the route that leads to the Slave River site. And as you watch this video, imagine yourself walking on this path. The trees, the land already know you. Yes, they know you because they've heard cries from your ancestors before. You are not a stranger. Your ancestors took their last bath from this river before they were sent away. And as they returned back to the land through you from the diaspora, you have to take your first bath of return. This river is called the Oche River. And people from Jamaica, my Caribbean people, who have a connection with this, people visit here and put their prayer requests across and they get answers to them. This is more than physical, this is spiritual. This river will give you your inner connection to your roots and to your ancestors.
When the captives arrived here, their humanity was totally stripped away. Under the scorching sun, they were gathered here, and this is where the branding took place. Their flesh were burnt with hot iron, marked with the initials of European slave traders. It was a mark of ownership, a symbol that they were no longer seen as people, but as property. At this auction, men, women, and even children were lined up before European and American slave traders. Their bodies were inspected, teeth were examined, and scars were checked.
140 years is not a really long time in the context of history. So it's hard for me to believe that blacks didn't have any rights here. They weren't treated as human beings. They were treated like animals.
The portion of land behind me has a very emotional story attached to it. Please let's observe a short moment of silence. You may not know why, but you understand soon. Captives who couldn't meet the needed specifications for auction were left here to face their own fate. That is, those who were sick, those who had injuries were left here. Because the slave master knew they would eventually die on the voyage. Some were taken home and cared by the people of Assin Manso, while others died. So here is surrounded by thousands of spirits hovering around in peace. That is why here in Assin Manso, it is a big taboo to call someone a slave or a donko, because it is known that their population is made up of people who went into captivity, people who were left at the auction site, and they don't want to be reminded of their pains. So it is forbidden to call someone a donko or a slave in Assin Manso. that your own brothers and sisters from the African continent were among those group of people that sold your ancestors into slavery? How did that make you feel? Look, whilst we were growing up in the African setting, our parents only taught us to love. They taught us to love everyone, irrespective of where everyone was coming from. My mom even told me I'm a stranger in this world. So whenever I see a stranger, I need to treat that stranger with respect and with love. So if this was what we were taught, then what went wrong? Was it because of greed or some selfish interest of some individuals? Today, this topic has become a very sensitive topic. You want to know why we sold you, but we are also not ready to speak about it. But we are the same group of people that keeps calling you to come back home because you belong to us. Do you think that would work? That would never work. The only time that could work is for us, the continental Africans, to make sure that this topic is properly addressed. For me, Kofi, I lived all my life believing that the continental Africans like myself, my brothers and my sisters, never suffered any pains. After all, we sent you away. So previously, whenever I see you, the name I call you was Obroni. And Obroni means a white person. So I never had any spiritual attachment and pains with you. I thought we never suffered any pains. Not until I came across a research that was conducted. And the findings of this research stated that the pains felt by our forebears, that same pains could be felt in us. So which means you and I shares a particular pain. But for me, I did not know which pain that was. So I embarked on a personal journey to understand this pain. Because if I don't understand this pain and I meet you, it's like normal. So I try to understand this pain. I had so much spiritual revelations, but I can't talk about spiritualities in here. But I always rely on a book that I read. And the title of my book that I read was The Transatlantic Slave Trade, Landmark, Legacies, and Expectations, a UNESCO book by J.E.K. Akwanda. Now in that book, when you read further, the professor made a very interesting revelation about the trade. He stated that during the trade, 1% of the indigenous Africans, 1% of them supported the trade. 99% of us fought against the trade. But today, the 99% of us are being blamed for the pains that was caused by the 1%. Sometimes I see you as a sister. I want to speak to you, but I'm scared of how you're going to respond to me. Likewise, you also see me as your brother. But the story that you've known about me does not even allow you to even trust me. And people with the same complexion, yes, so we can come together as one people. All that I wanted you to know. If you really want to understand this journey that you have embarked on, then you first need to understand our pain. If the diasporans don't understand the pain of the continental Africans, you don't need to come back. We don't need you. You can go wherever you want to go. And somebody asked me, Kofi, you're making me confused. You sold us. So why should we understand your pain before coming back home? And I said, I am going to put our pains in two scenarios. You have to choose one and tell me why you will go for it. Look, you lost your husband when you were very younger. Your husband left with you a beautiful daughter. You made a promise to your husband that you do whatever possible it is to give the best for your daughter. You did everything a woman could do. You sometimes have to starve just for your daughter to eat. You did everything. Your daughter grew up to become very intelligent and smart kid. The community was always envious of you because of the daughter that you had. You were so proud of your daughter. One morning, your daughter came to you and said, Mommy, I am representing my state in a quiz competition. And you told your daughter, when you go there, make sure you come back with the ultimate. Make me proud and make your daddy proud.
So you gave her a kiss on the forehead, and your daughter left for the quiz. So a few hours you're in the house, preparing your soul food and your mimosa, and you put on the television. Whilst you put on the television, you saw your daughter right on the television. And every question that was asked that day, your daughter answered all questions. So after the end of the program, she was adjourned the best. How would you feel as a mother? How would you feel? So proud. So the mother will be waiting for her daughter to come back. So whilst you're in the house waiting for her return, few hours you heard a knock on the door. Your daughter had a special way of knocking. So immediately you knew that knock, you knew your daughter was back home. So you ran to open the door to welcome your daughter. And whilst you opened that door to welcome her, to your surprise, somebody presented to you the dead body of your daughter. That your daughter who just left, she's dead and is the body. The second scenario, your daughter went to that same program, but this time she never came back. And you as the mother, you never saw your daughter again. The first is closure because you are the body. The second, you don't know. The two, which one would you go for?
The first one, I need that closure.
I have already had a research on this topic. 837 sample sizes. 86% of my respondents, they all went for closure. Because according to them, they can't stay a day of not knowing where their loved ones are. The prolonged aches and pains of not knowing, they cannot stand it. But when they have the body, it is very painful. But at least they know where they kept the body. They could always visit the graveside. They could always say thank you. So if all of us are going for closure because of the pains of not knowing, then my question to you too, have you guys really thought about the 99% continental Africans? Those Africans that have their brothers and sisters injured, stolen and taken away from us? Nobody brought to us your dead bodies. For myself and my brothers and sisters in here, for us to have our closure. We have also been through the pain of not knowing for over 400 years now. Families that you were stolen from have never known peace. I come from a family that many of our people were stolen. They mention names, but I don't even know them. We are also looking for our closure. So the question is, how do we also get our closure? The only time we'll get our closure is a day today that you have made it back home. So you're coming here today, you are giving closure to millions of your forebears who never even believed that there would ever be a day today that their children would ever represent on this land. You're coming home today, you are giving peace to this land. Because once upon a time, the land was so confused that she couldn't even account for the number of her own children. And you're coming here today, you are giving closure to myself and my sister. So you see, your journey here today, it is a spiritual journey. You have never planned to be here. No, it has already been planned for you to be here. And that is why I keep telling you that the best thing you can do to yourself today is to unlearn before you learn. Because many of what you know are never your story. Never tour this land as a tourist. You're never a tourist. You are a local just like us. So tour this land as a local and do whatever the locals does. Whilst I was coming to work this morning, I came across a famous quote of Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr., who once stated that people without the knowledge of your past history, origin, and culture, you were just like a tree without a root. Now, the Emperor Haile Selassie also said that an awareness of our past is essential to the establishment of our personality and identity as Africans. So if we don't know our past, what kind of identity and what kind of personality would we portray? So when I read these two quotes, I became very confused. And in my confusion, I asked myself a simple question. And the question was, who among us is an African? Who is an African? Because today, when you go to the West Indies, you have people like ourselves that prefer to be called Jamaicans, Guyanese, Barbados, and you know the rest. When you move all the way to the South American countries, You have people like us also call themselves Brazilians, Venezuelans, and you know the names. But wait, if you want to be more confused, just go to the US of A. And you have people like us that prefer to be called Black Americans, but not African Americans. So if that is the case, then there's a confusion of who an African is. And that is why a reggae musician in the person of Peter Tosh said it so beautifully. He said, don't matter the nationality. As long as you are a black man or a black woman, you are an African. Today, both of you have the same DNA composition in you, like myself and my sister. So you already have your African DNA in you. So that is why Kwame Nkrumah made it more simply by saying to you, not because you're born in Africa, that makes you African, but you are African because African is born in you. That is why today you have traveled for over 10,000 miles with all the risks. Donald Trump is manipulating the sky to kill so many of us traveling. But you have been so much stronger that with all those risks, you are still ready to come back and learn about your own self. When you came back to this land, my brothers will teach you more. I would also add my voice. But the land will teach you many things that you've forgotten. And you're going to be rich in your history. And you'll be so ready to share wherever you go. And you'll be telling Kofi, when I go back to Texas, I'm going to tell everybody of my ancestors, and you'll be so happy to share it. But unfortunately, when you get there, that energy that you told Kofi with, that energy gradually dies. Not because you wanted to, but because where you find yourself in, your history is being termed as a critical racial theory. They said it is racist for us to know about our own selves. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, even stated that when we know ourselves, it's going to create disunity and dislike. Do I care? I don't care. Knowing myself would rather make me a better person. So when I visited the US of A, I saw the Chinese telling their own story. I saw the Indians telling their own story. But why is it that when it comes to our turn, they want to share in our story writing? Is it because they are scared? Yes, they are scared. Because what they did to our ancestors during slavery, on the Middle Passage, through segregation, through civil rights movement, through Reconstruction era, through incarceration, all that they've done to us, the legacies of our ancestors, if we are made to write and tell those stories, the world can never stand it. So they will try to make our history as a white elephant. So when I came back from the States, I became extra motivated to tell our story without fear or favor. I am here to share with you the truth, the myth, and the lies about the transatlantic slave trade. But you see, before the coming of the Europeans to Africa, Africans lived in unison. We lived in peace and we lived in love. Although there exist among us all spirit conceivables, we have the good ones, we had the bad ones. We were never perfect as a people, no. But at least we were excellent. Now we found ourselves in an era called the acquisition era. That era was the era of great migrations. Africa was not a country. It was a continent of over 3,000 tribes and 7,500 languages. So during that era, tribes keep migrating from one point to the other in order for them to search for themselves a fertile land. If I'm so good in farming, I move to a place that I could get a fertile land to farm. If I'm so good in fishing, then what do? I go to the coast or the lake. So there was migrations everywhere. So because of the migration, it brought about so many tribal wars. So tribes keep fighting among themselves in order for them to expand their territories. Now, when I fight your group and I win over you, everything in your community, including yourself, becomes mine. I have all the right to do whatsoever I want to do. I can even kill you if I want to. But in the African system, you cannot do that. You don't have that right. Because we believe that conflict among us is inevitable. And that is why we have this adage that the teeth and the tongue always fight. But at the end of the day, they don't come out from the mouth, but they stayed at the rightful positions in the mouth. What can we do so that we could bring all these people together? So that we could all live and govern as a one state. So do you know what our kings did? They adopted two strategies in order to bring all of us on board. And the first strategy that they adopted is what many of us today called it the indenture servitude. So with the indenture servitude, you have rights, you have privileges, You were not owned. Your children were not slaves. In that system also, I being the winner, I would identify among you those that have the expertise, the technical know-how, the abilities, those that are so stronger. I'll bring you closer to myself so that whatever you have, you use it to support my kingdom. And you become our elders and we will make decisions for the community. So your group will never feel picked because they knew their representation. Now, those that were so good in artisans and healing and stuff, we also give you a place that you could manufacture and do your own thing. So basically, you would understand the journey and you all come together as one people. So according to Alex Afo, in his book entitled The Cry and Lamentation of Our Ancestors, Chronicles of African Untold Stories, he made mention that this indentured servitude brought 60% of us together. But if the 60% are together, what about the 40%? Because the 40% can equally fight and win. So our king said, what can we do that could bring the 40% in addition to the 60% so we could all rule peacefully in our community? And that is when the next strategy was implemented. And do you know what that was? Intermarriages. Tribe A, that was fighting tribe B. Now we are intermarrying among ourselves. So how then do I fight you? When I fight you, I fight my own self. It was even evident that the Ashantis went all the way to the northern region and they imported the males from the northern region and the Ashantis gave them their female royals just for them to sleep with them and get them pregnant. Because they were fighting with the northerners and the northerners they don't want that fighting to prolong. So they have to preach for peace. So in the 1400s in Ghana, you can never call anyone a slave. That is why today when you ask me those that perpetrated the crime, you cannot point fingers. Because in that era, you dare not call someone a slave. Because we all came together happily, peacefully, and we worked together. So whilst our ancestors enjoyed this, because it was the greatest of achievements, to bring two different tribes together. So we enjoyed it. Our ancestors celebrated it. They even popped champagne to celebrate this achievement. While they were celebrating it, little did they know that danger was very close. And the danger landed here with us in 1471. And that danger landed at a community in the western region called Shama. And that danger was the Portuguese. When the Portuguese landed at our coast, it was the doing of our own ancestors that allowed the Portuguese to stay on our land. Because they allowed themselves to be manipulated. And the Portuguese used the best part of us in getting into us. But when I grew, I've never blamed my ancestors. Because the same trick that they use is the same trick they use on us now. They capitalize on our hospitality. Because for us, we are just born to love. Whatever happened, we are just loving. Whenever there's love, African man is there, African woman is there, we are just loving. I am not saying we should not love, no. But all that I'm saying is when loving, let's observe the energies first. Our ancestors did not. So when they saw them dying in the ship, they brought them from their slave ship, fed them, clothed them, healed their wounds, so that when they recover, we could have asked their mission on our land. Later did we knew that we're inviting the devil to a dinner. And when you invite the devil to a dinner, what can you be served? It's poison. So these Portuguese landed with us. They stayed among us. And they saw the country and the land in its entirety. They saw how rich the land was, how rich our human resource base were. They saw our healers. They saw our astronomers. They saw everything that they could have seen. Things that they've never seen, they saw it on this land. They were even picking nuggets of gold on the floor. The land was so rich. When they saw those gold and everything, they started writing in their books by giving us a name. And they named our country the Gold Coast. But if you have even named the country, they even went ahead to name the children of the land. And do you know what they named us? They named us the children of the sun because of how melanated our skin was. Now the Portuguese traded with us to capture captives to fill in the Spanish colonies in the Americas. And this company that was awarded this contract was the South Sea, and they were to provide 4,800 captives per annum for 30 years. And the Queen of England, Queen Anne, was having 22.5% shares of this company. So in the 1700s, the British took over the slave route and they were making so many captives into the New World. That is why in 1523, they landed at Connecticut and Massachusetts, and they built the New England. So now they have everything. Slavery is starting. But everyone was scared. Nobody wants to put his name to slavery. So you know what they did? Slavery just need to be institutionalized. And that is why they took slavery away from the streets, all the way to the church. And from the church, a Portuguese Roman Catholic priest in the person of Bartolomeo de las Casas. It was this man of God that told their people that I have seen the light in Africa. Africa is the best. So why don't you go for their people? That is why they always confuse you. That when they came to Africa, they bought slaves. But I always tell them it's a lie. Because imagine if you are an employer and you are to employ someone in a real estate development. Would you go for experience or inexperience? Perfectly, that is it. So whilst they were in us and they saw us, they knew who to go for. That is why when you go to Virginia, there was a man called Thomas Fuller, who was a working calculator. This man never attended school in the New World. But whatever mathematics you put on board, he solved it completely. Where does he get that information from? Where does he have that knowledge from? Is that this man is already established. He already knows his what before he was stolen away. So they took away our best and they turned them into slaves. Now, during the discourse of the slave trade, slave markets also played an important role because the market was where the two devils met, the buyers and the sellers. According to one historian, in the person of Professor Akosua Adoma Pebi, in a book entitled The History of the Indigenous Slavery in Ghana, from the 15th century to 19th century, she made mention Ghana to have had 63 slave markets. But with all these markets, she made mention of two markets to have played the most important role. She spoke about the largest market and she spoke about the busiest market. Both the largest and the busiest could all be found in Ghana. Even though Ghana was not the slave coast, Nigeria was more of a slave coast than Ghana. But Ghana, because Ghana had the infrastructure, in terms of Fort and Castle market, Ghana was used as the exit point. So captives that were captured from everywhere in West Africa. So just imagine, somebody captured from Mali, and that person has to walk in chains and shackles, barefooted and half naked, with no food, with no water. Do you know how many miles that person could have walked? Some walked for 7 months in chains and shackles. Mothers were in the same chains with the children. And the child kept screaming, Mama, Mama, I'm dying. But what can you do? The physical pain is what the books write about. But how many books have written about the emotional and the psychological pain? They will never write about it. That emotional and psychological pain is what we have to research on. Because I don't know how they even survive a day. Because for me, I don't know what I will do. Maybe I will just kill myself because I can't see my son dying and whilst I can't do anything. Men that fought for us were tightly chained that they cannot even fight. They made those journeys until they landed here at the market. When they landed here at this market, the market goes all the way to the community. But the reason why this area has been confined is because this area has been identified to have been the slave cemetery within the slave market. So from the edge of the grass all the way to the river, we are all walking on the remains of your ancestors. And that is why when you are coming through the main gate, the gate itself looks very short. So almost all of you entered like this. Yes, unconsciously, you've already paid your respect to the land. When they landed here, this was where they were properly fed. Broken bottles and shaving them before they were made to walk to the river in order for them to take their last bath. At the riverside, they went through their first ever auction and their first ever branding. Those that could not continue with the journey are those that were buried and they have been waiting for you for over 400 years now and we're working on them today. They never even believe a day like this would ever happen. So I am sure wherever they are, buried beneath us, I am sure they are proud that we made it back home. From here, they landed at the dungeons. 3 months in the dungeons. The dungeons was not built as a prison. It was built as a warehouse. And later this warehouse was converted into a prison. So just imagine the condition of that dungeon. There was no ventilation. Our ancestors ate and they drank in their fecal matters. Imagine at night how the dungeons would look like. You have infants wailing, children shouting, men crying. Ironically, with all the pains, they keep screaming and shouting, please, we need you, take us out of this place. But nobody listened. And the surprising thing is, on top of the dungeons should be something that should listen. It was a church. So what kind of God was that church preaching? Was that church preaching Christianity, or that church was preaching religion? That church was preaching religion. Because religion became a doctrine for man to make you feel inferior or to make others feel superior. And that is what they preach at the door of no return, at the dungeons. 3 months, the floating prisons, which people call the slave ship, arrived. 35,000 slave ships perpetrated this crime on us. And when the slave ship arrived, it's the time for our ancestors to go on the way to the new world. But before you could get onto the slave ship, there was a door that they all crossed. And the name on this door is the door of no return. That door is self-explanatory. That door is simply telling you that when you cross me, you're never going to come back. And if you are so stubborn like you, and you still insist to come back, they will make sure you come back as confused as ever. Today, are you not back? You are, right? Which tribe of Africa do you come from? Do you know? It's that tribe. It's not your fault. It was well orchestrated. And it all started at the door of no return. That was where they took away the most important part of us. And immediately they took it away from us, they won over us. And do you know what that was? Our names. Look, with African naming system, you don't have a choice. You were given life assignment. Your name should connect you to your community, your destiny, and your clan. So I might not even know this brother of mine or this brother of mine. But immediately he mentions his name to me now, I should be able to tell you where he's coming from. So if all those names has been taken away from us, where do we start? How do we even know where we are coming from? A typical example is the movie The Root. This man was beat to the point of death just for him to do what? To denounce his name. Why? Because if that name is broken, your soul is broken. But in that era, the pains on our ancestors were so much. So they had to let go of their own names and acquire to themselves their slave names. But the day we acquired on ourselves our slave names, that was the day you and I became inferior. Because there's a saying that you cannot fight and win the person that named you. So if that saying is true, who named you? Is your name or a name of a slave owner? That is why today when I get married to you and we give birth, we name our child, right? And we are the only ones that could write the biography of our own children. That is why for the past 400 years now, these Europeans have been writing our own story. Because in their minds, their names on us means they own us. Look, the time has come. We need to detach ourselves from those names. And we also need to be able to tell our own story. Because if the lion doesn't have his own storyteller, the answer would always be glorified. If this European can write, we can write better. And if they can lie, oh, come on. We can also lie better. So the time has come to change the narrative and tell our own story. But before that story needs to be told, that curse that they planted, that curse needs to be broken. And that curse is the door of no return. That door needs to be changed to the door of return. Because words are very powerful. But the question is, how do we do that? That is why, as you can see in our ancestral graveyard, we have the mortal remains of our two great ancestors. From the right, her name is Madame Crystal from Kingston, Jamaica. She's representing the West Indies. She endured the worst punishment of her life when she had her teeth all chiseled out in an attempt to force her to feed. Despite going through that pain, this lady died in 1830. And while she was about to say goodbye, the only thing she said was, "Bring me back home someday." I am not sure she knew she would, but some way, somehow, her remains were brought back. In the middle is Samuel Carson, the first African American without any formal education, who landed in the U.S. Navy, served with all his strength and might, died at the age of 35 years. Whilst he was serving America, he was seen as an American. But immediately he died, he was seen as an African. He was never given a befitting burial. So on the 31st day of July 1998 is the day for that curse to be broken. So the two remains of our ancestors re-entered the country through the infamous door of no return at the Cape Coast Dungeons. Immediately re-entered that door. That door was made bigger, and the prophecy was, those of you that will be coming back will be more than those that were stolen. And ever since that day, that prophecy, that prophecy has been survived, has been achieved. In 2019 in Ghana, it was a year of return celebration. 1619 Virginia Jamestown, 2019 Ghana. When you do the math, do you know how many years it is? 400. When you read the Bible, Genesis chapter 15, verses 13 and 14, the Bible said, you will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years on the land that is not yours. But after that, the country that enslaved you would I judge, and my children will come out with the greatest of substance. So which means 2019, we need to start all over again. And the world needs to start again. Did that happen? How? 2019, did everything started all over again? It did. That was when the COVID came.
Oh, COVID.
Yeah. Everything went aground because our prophecy have been heard. So when the Prime Minister of Barbados saw it and she was coming, said, no, if today is the day, then I think the best people that should come before me should be my forebearers. So she excavated most slave cemeteries from Newton, Barbados. And all the remains that she had, she brought in a beautiful casket on the 11th of November 2019, all the way from Barbados. And that's the third tomb you see over here. Immediately after the burial, groups also petitioned that they also wanted to be buried here. So inside the graveyard was given out. And today, we have 576 ashes right inside this graveyard. The trade was abolished in 1807, but not slavery. With slavery, I don't know the date. I only know what the book says. That in the US of A, 1865. British colony 1834 to 1833 to 1834. French colony 1846, Brazil 1888. But for me, I don't believe slavery has been abolished. It has rather evolved into a new form. And today we have moved away from slavery in chains and shackles to mental slavery. And that is why Garvey and Bob Marley told us to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because none other than ourselves can free our mind.